Vayidor Yaakov neder lemor. Yaakov made a vow. Im yeh Hashem Elokim imodi ushmarani baderech hazeh asher nochi holech. If God will be with me and He will guard me on this path where I will go, v'nasan li lechem le'echol uveged lilbosh, and He will give me food to eat and clothing to wear. V'shavti v'shalom el beis avi, v'haya Hashem li lelokim. I will then return to this home, to this place of God, and God will be my God. Hashem will be my God. For Evan Azos, and then this Evan that I've made, a matzeva, beis elokim, kol asher titin li aser asrenu, and I will give him a maser from all that I have. So which statement, which phrase is particularly troubling in that vow? I underlined it for you. V'haya Hashem li lelokim. What does it seem to be saying? What does it seem to be saying on the surface is what? If God is with me, if you'll do all this, then you'll be my God. And what's the flip side of that? If you don't, then what? So that's a real problem. That's a real problem for a patriarch to be issuing a vow like that is problematic for us. All right, again, I'm going to leave questions to the end unless it's immediate, okay? All right, don't forget it. I'll be happy to hear it, all right? Okay, so we need to explore this. We need to find out, to figure out what is Yaakov actually saying at this moment and what does V'haya Hashem li lelokim mean? So, and compounding the problem is if you look at the promises that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made to him in the dream, they are exactly the things that he seems to be making conditional. What does Hashem say? Look at the second section. Ushmarticho b'chol asher tilech, v'ashrivosicho el adamazos. I will guard you wherever you go, and I will bring you back, etc., etc. What is Hashem promising? Hashem is promising the very things that Yaakov afterwards seems to be asking about or asking for. What are you asking for? Hashem told you. What's going on? So if you take a look at the second page, we'll skip for a moment the side issue. Maybe I'll get a chance to talk about that at the end. The difficulty with this vow is underscored by a Medrash Rabbah where Rabbi Avo and Rabbi Yonasan are arguing, and one says, Misureses hi haparsha, va'acharino amar al seder nemor. Now remember, we've spoken about this before. I'm looking at page number 2, section 2. You remember, we've asked, does the Torah follow chronological order? And we've answered that it does, except when it doesn't, right? That's been our answer, which is that it definitely follows chronological order. Sometimes it might not, depending on here, the rabbis and the Medrash are arguing about that. And what does one say? One of them says, you can't read the Parsha as it flows. What you have to do is you have to put this neder before the dream. Right? In other words, Yaakov can't be asking for things that Hashem already promised and making them conditional. Therefore, what it has to be is Hashem, he had this neder, he had the dream, he had the neder, and in response, HaKadosh Baruch Hu appeared to him in the dream. So in other words, he says, with God will be with me, and Hashem says, I will be with you. If God will guard me, Hashem says, I will guard you. That's the only way, according to that commentary, to that Rav in the Medrash, that this text could make sense. He has to be in Misureses HaParsha. You have to switch it around, which shows the great difficulty with understanding this vow. Rashi will actually take a look at the bottom of the page. Rashi takes the vow and dissects it, phrase by phrase. And he shows how each of these phrases make sense in and of themselves. If God is with me, im yishmor, etc., ushmarani. And what he does with the problematic pasuk is very interesting. He says, Vishavti v'shalom al-beisavi, b'shalom, shalom min hachet, she'anochi lo almad midarchei lavon. If I return complete, without sin, having resisted the temptation to fall into the traps that Lavan will make for me, then Hayah Hashem li lelokim. You'll be my God because I will have succeeded. I will have succeeded in coming back whole from Lavan's house. So that's one way to approach that problematic puzzle. Still doesn't answer all of the other issues with the vow. Why is he questioning the very things that Hashem promises? But it does offer an approach to that problematic puzzle. Take a look at page number 3. Page number 3, we find, and I'm just giving you among the many commentaries who wrestle with this, we're going to take a look at another 2. The Rashbam, who I have told you is my favorite classical Perush because he sticks close to the Pashut Pshat. He always insists on the Pshat. It's Rashi's grandson, and he takes his grandfather to task periodically for going to Medrash. So what does the Rashbam say? V'ayah Hashem li lelokim. That doesn't mean God will be my God. It means sheyasiani b'chol ma'asai. That if God gives me success in everything I try to do, then I will be returning here in peace, etc. So that's the Rashbam. The Sforno offers a very interesting pshat. I certainly don't think it's Pashut Pshat, but it's fascinating. V'haya Hashem li lelokim, the second paragraph at the bottom of the page 3, towards the bottom of page 3. Oz yeh Hashem ledayon im lo avadetehu b'kol kochi. God, what does it mean? V'haya Hashem li lelokim. Now, what does the word Elokim mean in the Torah? Sometimes it means God. Sometimes it means what? Judge. Says the Sforno, that's what he's saying. If you do all those things for me, just make it possible, then you will be my judge as to whether or not I will worship you in the right way. You can judge me. I promise you that I will, and you can be my judge. So it's an interesting approach. But it's the Ramban who offers a revolutionary approach. And you could read it without recognizing how revolutionary it is. And we have to look at it carefully. And it's going to serve as the basis of most of the shir that's going to follow. The Ramban says, V'ayah Hashem li lelokim. That is einanu t'nai kedivrei Rashi. That is not part of Yaakov's requests, conditional requests. What is it? Hu neder. It's a neder. V'in yano im ashuv el beis avi, e'evod Hashem hamiyuchad be'eretz hanivcheres. If I can return whole to this land, then I will be able to worship God completely, because you can only worship God completely, I'm putting in the extra words, and we'll see why in a moment, when you are in Eretz Yisrael. I will worship God completely upon my return, because I am recognizing now that the only place to worship God completely is in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, V'ayah Hashem li lelokim, I will be able to worship you fully upon my return. Now, what's fascinating about this is that the Ramban makes this a halachic and philosophical position, which is very, very revolutionary. The Ramban says what? Well, he did, right. We'll talk about that in a second, right. So, what does the Ramban say? The Ramban says that every mitzvah you perform, no matter what that mitzvah might be, even the mitzvot that are not tluyot baretz, even those mitzvot that are not clearly tied into the land, every mitzvah you perform outside the land of Israel is incomplete. It can only be complete in Eretz Israel. That's the Rambam. Now, let's understand, and let's take a look at a medrash first. That's on a paragraph that we say a couple of times a day, and then we'll talk about this for a moment. The Ramban has source for this in an earlier medrash. Take a look at page number 4. We say in the second paragraph of the Shema, what do we say? If we fail to listen to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, va'avadetem mehero me'al ha'oretz hatova asher Shem nosein lachem. Right? If you fail to listen to me, if you fail to observe my laws, then you will be lost, you will be sent, destroyed from the land, go out of the land. What's the next pasuk? V'samtem es devorai ela al levavchem, ukshartem osam lios al yedchem v'ayu l'totafot. All of a sudden, what you shall place these things upon your heart and upon your soul. Put on tefillin, right? Have a mezuzah. So what does the Medrash? The Medrash asks, what's the connection between those two psukim? What's the connection between va'avadetem mehera and observing the laws? So one answer very clearly could be, and it's not the one that the Medrash chooses, one answer clearly could be that the only way you're going to remain whole and identified as a Jew who will come back to the land is if you follow the laws wherever you are. And we know that. We know that if we look at Jewish history, it's those of us who have kept the law that very often are able to perpetuate not just the law, but Judaism itself across the ages. But what does the Sifri say? The Sifri says, va'avadetem mehera, v'samtem, those two psukim. How do I explain them? Afal pi she'ani megala eschem min ha'aretz l'chutz ha'aretz. Even though I will exile you from the land to outside the land, have a mitzuyonim b'mitzvos, be excellent in your performance of mitzvot, kishe tachzeru lo yu alechem kechadoshim. Do the mitzvot so that when you get back to the land of Israel, they will not appear to be alien to you. They'll be familiar to you. Now, if you take that medrash at face value, on some level, all the mitzvot performed outside the land of Israel are practice. They're practice. They're practice for when we get back to Israel and can do them completely. Now I'll step back, because this can easily be misquoted. I don't believe the Medrash is saying they are totally practice. Obviously, it's a mitzvah to put on tefillin in Englewood, New Jersey, where I was, right? It's a mitzvah. However, what the Ramban is saying and what the Medrash is saying is that mitzvah performed perfectly outside the land is imperfect. It's not imperfect. It's not complete. And as you said, the Ramban lived, he put his money where his mouth was, right? What did the Ramban do towards the end, towards the latter half of his life? He made aliyah, right? When there was no nefesh b'nefesh, and there was very, very difficult to do so. And he establishes a community where? In the old city, which is why you have the Ramban Shul. And with the point being that he himself felt, I was not complete, I am not complete outside the land. Important for now?
Did Yaakov ever fulfill his neder?
We'll talk about it. Did Yaakov, she asks, did Yaakov ever fulfill his neder? We're either going to talk about that today or next week. It depends on our time. All right, very good question, but very, very good question. Now, I'm going to take the Ramban one step further. What if he says, "V'shavti v'shalom el beis avi, v'yashem li lelokim," is a statement that I realize that God is not my complete God unless I'm in Israel. What if we take the phrase, V'shavti v'shalom el beis avi, as Yaakov's promise? The beginning of Yaakov's promise as to what he'll do. If you guard me wherever I go, if you take care of me wherever I am, then I promise you, God, I will not misunderstand. I will not feel that your presence in my life outside the land of Israel means that I can stay outside the land of Israel. Because think about it. These are two potentially conflicting concepts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying in the dream. What does he say? He says, I will be with you wherever you go. What is the logical conclusion of that phrase? Stay where you are, right? Along comes Yaakov and he says, I recognize that your being with me wherever I am is necessary for my survival, but I won't misunderstand it. I won't misunderstand. It's like my wife was speaking to a friend who lives in Borough Park. She says, what do I need Israel for? I've got Borough Park, right? You've got all these, the idea being what? The idea being God is my God here, or what do I have to go back to Israel? I walk the streets of Borough Park. So think about it. These are potentially two conflicting messages that Yaakov is saying, I understand. Vishavti, I promise God, I'll come back. I'll come back. And as proof, by the way, of the fact that these are two conflicting messages and that it's not a foregone conclusion that you accept both of them, if you look at page 5, you'll find a quote from the Pittsburgh Platform of Reform Judaism, which was a platform which issued a whole series of statements about Reform Judaism. And one of them was the following, and let's read it. We consider ourselves no longer a nation, but a religious community, and therefore expect neither a return to Palestine, nor a sacrificial worship under the sons of Aaron, nor the restoration of any of the laws concerning the Jewish state. Wow. What does that mean? Again, one could argue it's logical. God is spreading the Jews all around the world. When we're all around the world, we can affect the world, right? So what do I have to go back to the Jewish state for? Now, it happens to be that the next major convention after the Shoah negated that statement and came out in favor of reestablishing the state of Israel. But the fact is that at one point in their deliberations, they were basically saying, if God is with me wherever I go, I don't have to go back. And not only that, I shouldn't go back. I should stay where I am because I can have more impact if I'm spread around the world. So that is perhaps, I'm taking the Ramban one step further and saying perhaps Vishavti Vishalom is what? A promise. I'll come back. I won't misunderstand. I will come back. Now let's take a look at the resolution. Take a look at, we're going to answer your question about the neder. Take a look at the resolution. The resolution that I'm quoting is at the end of Yaakov's stay at Lavan's house. And it describes a second dream in Parshas Vayetze. Everybody focuses only on the first, which is the dream of the ladder ascending heaven. But this is the second dream. Now, what's interesting about this dream, by the way, is that we do not read it in real time. We only read it as Yaakov explains it to his wives. So it's not clear, did he really dream this dream? Or is this just a way of convincing them to come back to Israel? But one way or the other, look at the text. Vayar Yaakov es pnei Lavan. Right, he sees the face of Lavan, second line in page number 5, section 5. Vayomer Hashem el Yaakov, shuv el eretz avosecha umoladetecha. Go back to the land, to your land, and to your birthplace. Go back. And then he gathers his wives, right? He brings Rachel and Leah together. And he says to them, and look at the underlined section, First he says to them, I see your father's face, that it's not the same, that he's looking at me askance because of all that's happened and all the wealth that I've amassed. And I say, Vayhi ba'esi chamasom v'so enai, and I look at the underlined section, V'era b'chalom v'hinei atudim ha'olim al hatzon akudim nekudim uvrudim. I saw in my dream a bunch of sheep, and they were spotted and speckled. Now, this is referring to what? This is referring to the agreements he was making with Lavan, which he claims Lavan was undoing, which is at one point he said, okay, all spotted sheep will belong to you, so they all came out spotted. So he said, no, I didn't mean that, all speckled sheep, whatever it may be. Vayomer elai malach Elokim b'chalom, Yaakov, vayomer hineni. Vayomer son no einecha, ure'ei es ha'atudim, lift your eyes, take a look at the spotted and speckled sheep. Anochi ha'el Beisel, I am the God of Bethel, asher moshachta sham matzeva, where you anointed a rock, asher nodarta li neder, right, where you made a vow, atakum tsemin haaretz hazos v'shuv el eretz moladetecha. What do we see here? This is really a very, very unsettling event. Why? Yaakov does not go back of his own volition. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying to him in the dream is what? You're forgetting your neder. Again, if we explain the neder the way we've suggested, you're forgetting the neder. You promised me what? You promised me you'd go back. You anointed a matzeva. You made a neder. Now get up and go back. I'm sorry, say again? No, that's correct. That's correct. He didn't give him a limited time, but he expected him to determine when it would be time. In other words, and obvious, again, I'm not accusing Yaakov. Maybe there were reasons for it, whatever. But what is the evidence of the text? The evidence of the text is that God has to turn to him, even before the dream, where he says, and say to him, go back. He doesn't do it of his own volition. And the very fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is reminding him of the neder, et cetera, means, I think, that Hashem is saying, now's the time, you should recognize this and gone back. There's also something else that's unsettling about this dream. Anybody want to suggest it? Take a look at how, yes.
The sheep.
Yeah. Right.
He used to dream of a ladder.
Okay, all right. Come back to you. I'll come back to you. Come back to you in just a moment. Good, that's the answer. What's the question that we would raise is, what's the connection between the first half of the dream and the second half of the dream? What's the connection between the spotted and speckled sheep and God's commandment to go home? So, as you're saying, one of the answers might be, it was said by, beautifully said by Rabbi Miller, a Rav in America who was very prominent. When you stop dreaming about angels and you start dreaming about sheep, it's time to go home. All right? Isn't that powerful, right? And therefore, that could be the explanation for the connection. And when he says, I have seen everything that Lavan is doing to you, it doesn't just mean that he's fooling you and cheating you. What does it mean? I see that he's having an effect on you. You're getting sucked in. And therefore, when you're dreaming of sheep, go back. Time to return. Yes?
This is a dream. It's subconsciously, he's understanding.
Okay, very good. Very good point. If that's a modern interpretation of dreams, right? In other words, in those days, they saw dreams perhaps as visions of that. Well, let's take the first dream he dreamt, where God's ladder ascending heaven. So yeah, you could say it's his subconscious is worried that God's not going to stay with him, and that's why he's dreaming the dream. But God is delivering a message God is saying to him, I will be with you. So here too, yeah, you're right. Maybe subconsciously he knows what he's supposed to do, but he claims. Now, I want you to remember, he claims this dream we don't read about as it happens. This dream we only read about it as it is repeated to Rachel and Leah. So we don't know what changed in the interpretation and what was different, because if you take a look, for example, later we'll talk about this someday, Paro's dreams. When he dreams the dream, it says it in real time in the Torah, and then the Torah tells you how he repeats it to Yosef, and there are differences between those two renditions. So this is hearsay. And the hearsay may be that he's feeling conflicted, correct, but one way or the other, God has to say to him, go home. And that is indicated even before the dream. It says, God says to him, go home.
Also, we don't determine how God appears to us. It's within Hashem's power to appear to us. It's not a self-determination thing.
Right, correct.
Maybe through observance of mitzvahs, that's a way to connect.
Correct. Look, that's, again, I'll take one more comment. And yeah.
Was God always appeared in dreams to the Nevi and to...
It's interesting because the Rambam will say that every event that occurs in the Torah where a malach talks to the man, it's a vision. It's not a real event. And that ties in with what you're saying. In other words, dreams are very important here. Both of you are saying different ends of the same thing, which is dreams are important. They may reflect our own uncertainties, and they may also reflect, and we believe they do reflect, events that are going to occur or what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to know. So Yaakov is told to go back, and he goes back. And when he goes back, we see something. There's a pasuk in the Torah, which is very familiar to many of us, is he goes back and Lavan accosts him and argues with him and tells him, why did you run away? And you stole my daughters and whatever, a whole bunch of things. And they make an agreement to part, right? This is our boundary. You're not going to go over this to attack me in any way. V'Yaakov halach l'darko. Vayifku uvo malachei Elohim. Yaakov is coming back into the land of Israel. And what does it say? Vayifku uvo malachei Elohim. So what's the problem with that statement? What do they say? What's their message? Vayifku vo malachei Elokim is just simply what? Every time malachim appear in the Torah, they're there for a purpose, right? They're saying something. The malachim who come to Avraham are saying, Sarah's going to have a child, The malachim that come to Lot say, get out of Sodom. What do the malachim say here? It just says they appear, and it doesn't tell you why. So one explanation ties into everything we've said, which is what? That as he returns to Israel, the relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu becomes fuller, and it is represented by the appearance of malachim who appear to him. All right, and the Chazal, we learned something very interesting as children. I remember the first dream. It says the angels are ascending and descending, which is backwards, right? You would think the angels descend and then they go up because they come from Shemayim. So what do Chazal say? Chazal say the angels who accompanied him in Israel are going, and the angels that are going to accompany him are going down. Now that's a beautiful image, but what's its Musar Haskel? Exactly what we're saying. Your relationship with God is different outside the land of Israel. So there will be different angels accompanying you outside the land of Israel. In other words, that's a vision that has very, very strong significance, underscoring what we said. Say again?
The word that's used is It's a more forceful thing.
Okay, all right. Now we're going to talk about that in just a moment. What is vayifka uvo? That's very strange. It's strange language. Paga is a very strong word. It means to encounter in a very strong way. Think back, maybe some of you will know, did this word appear anywhere else? At the very beginning of the Parsha. When Yaakov settles, that comes to a place where he's supposed to, and it says Bamakom, which causes an argument. What does it means? The place. What is the place? It doesn't say a place. And it says Vayifka Bamakom, Ayol and Sham. He encounters the place. But it occurred to me many years ago, there's a fascinating nuance of difference between the phrase at the first part of the parsha and the phrase here. Can anybody pick it up? In Vayifka b'makom, what, say again? One is, okay, right? One is plural because it's talking about the angels approaching him or being pogea, and there he was individually, Vayifka b'makom. Look at the subject and the object. In the case at the beginning of the parsha, Vayifga b'makom, right? He is encountering the place. The place towers over him. Here, what does it say? Vayifku uvo. He towers over them. Coming back whole from the house of Lavan, he is now the subject of that phrase. What, say again?
You have a capital H and he encountered a certain place in English.
Oh, that's just because it's the beginning of a sentence.
So it's a small H there.
Yeah, correct. But so what we're suggesting is that the Torah is indicating that after his return, having successfully, again, managed to remain true and faithful in the house of Lavan, which was no easy feat, Vayifhuvo. Now they're encountering him.
They encountered him.
Right. Oh, so the object rather than the subject. He is the object. First.
So you could say that it's not so.
No.
But
It's compare the two phrases. In the case of Vayifka b'makom, the place is the object. He's the subject. So if he's encountering, then that's something that is to be encountered, right? That is higher than him. Here, he is, thank you for correcting my grammar. Here he is the object. They are the subject. Again, it means they encounter him. He is towering over them.
just to go back, you said Vayifka, there has to be some speech, but it reminds me of Vayera Hashem el Abraham, and there's no speech.
Right.
Can you not interpret it as an account?
That's enough. Thank you. There are various interpretations, but that's also a problem. In the beginning of Parshas Vayera, where Hashem appears to Avram and seemingly doesn't say anything. The Pashat Pshat is that he's appearing to him through the angels that he'll just see. That's the Pashat Pshat. All right, anyway, so what we see is that he has successfully returned. He's now fulfilling his neder, except he doesn't. Once again, he comes back to Eretz. What did he promise? He said, I'll come back here. I will anoint a monument here. All right. And he doesn't go back. He basically goes and stays in Sukkot and then near Shechem. And the whole event of Shimon and Levi takes place. And then what does God say to him? Look at the next to last paragraph on page 6. Vayomer Elokim el Yaakov, kum alei beis hel, v'shev sham, v'asei sham mizbeach, l'kel hanireh olecha. What's happening here? God appears to him again and says, you haven't done what you're supposed to do, right? You still haven't fulfilled your neder. Coming back to the land isn't enough. You have to fulfill the promise that you made to me concerning your worship of me. And therefore you have to go back. And once again, we find that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to tell him, has to command him to do what he promised to do. So what does this all tell us, obviously? What it all tells us is that we have to understand those individuals who I call failed Zionists. What I mean by that is, I used to say it to my community in Englewood, and I used to put myself among the group. Because a true Zionist has to make aliyah, right? Failed Zionists, but the Torah seems to understand that it's not easy. Seems to understand that Yaakov Avinu had to be pushed to fulfill what he promised, because it's not easy. And therefore, what we have here is an indication that, again, two things. Number one, that God's double promise of I'll be with you wherever you go, I'll be with you in Borough Park, is not negating come back. The two are real, the two create a balance, and if you negate one end of that balance, as the Reform movement did and had to correct, then you're negating what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from you. We'll end with one last comment, which is a little bit off topic, but it's such a beautiful interpretation that it maybe plays a role in what we're saying. What does he do? He creates a matzeva. What's a matzeva? What's the difference between a matzeva and a mizbeach? A matzeva is one stone. It's a pillar. A mizbeach is created out of many stones. Now, what happens as the Torah continues, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives the mitzvot to Bnei Israel, one of the mitzvot he says is, Lo takim matzeva, you shall not make a matzeva, asher soneh Hashem, which Hashem dislikes. You should not make, you should worship God through a mizbeach and not through a matzeva. But what happened? Yaakov erected a matzeva. There was a matzeva through the patriarchal era. It wasn't always a mizbeach. And why is he answering it now? What's wrong with it? So Rav Shimshon Fall Hirsch offers a very, very beautiful interpretation. He suggests the following. He says, a matzeva is simply a statement of God's existence. What? It's totally God. I don't do anything to create a matzeva, right? I'm not involved in its creation. I'm simply taking something that God created and using it as part of my worship of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A mizbeach is different. The mizbeach is a partnership between God and man. A mizbeach is taking God's substances and creating something new. The patriarchal era, all what that was appropriate, he says, was a matzeva. Because at that point, we were not given the mitzvot. We were not yet partners with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in creating Kedusha in the world. Once the mitzvot are given to us and we become partners, then we have to worship through a mizbeach. It's not enough to have a matzeva. We have to create something and be partners with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All right, so we'll end there. This is, I'm up to the end of my time. We will take a look next week, Bezras Hashem, at Yaakov's return to the land of Israel and what happens and the things that emerge at that point. Okay, I'll take any questions or comments now. I'm sorry, say it. That's correct. Well, correct. Actually, the one they use to show that the rabbis use to show the structure of a good neder is the one that's done by Reuven, Gad, and Chatzi Shevet Menashe, which is it has to be this will happen if, and this will happen if not. In a sense, that's there, but not really. In the neder there, they're saying if we go out and we do this, then we'll get the land. So, yes. Right.
Why that word? It's a very
okay. So I'll give you one answer given by Chazal, and then I'll suggest another. What she's asking, why does it use the verb paga with such strength? So number one, the rabbis say that ein pikia elot tefillah. And it's a medrashic interpretation that to be pokea, when he was pokea b'makom, is he stopped to daven, right? As we often find ourselves doing. But I think on a Pashat Pshat level, it's a way of indicating the power and the strength and the importance of these meetings. And I think drawing our attention to both of them and comparing them. Pogea means, Yifkam, using a different verb because these were very, very important events. And the strength of the verb. Now, that's just a thought, but yes. Pigua is a terror, right, Pegara, right, correct. Pigua is very strong and usually means negative,
What was the purpose of Vayivku Vo Malachayel?
The purpose of Vayivku Vo, I think, was twofold. One, to say that I'm coming back to Eretz Yisrael, and it's true, my relationship with Hashem is different here, so the new angels have to come. And the other is, it's to indicate that Yaakov had reached a very important level in his life, that he is now the object, he's now the one that the angels are bowing down to. Because there's no message other than that, other than those two, that seems to emerge from the text. Okay, yes? I'm sorry, you have to be really loud. All right, very good. She mentions that we left out something about Yaakov's return, and that Yaakov's return was motivated, partly at least, by it, but I think that strengthens our point. Even when he saw things were changing, God still had told him that you've got to go back. And if we want to see the importance of that, think of what's happening in the States today, right? And the rationalizations of, I can manage. The fact that God still has to say, kumle, go, means that he wasn't doing it until he said it, even with the change of situation. So, and I think that gives us such a much more important message, which is even when things look bad, we tend not to leave, and that's a problem. All right, there's very famous, I'll end with this very famous story of, and you cannot judge the people who were victims in the Holocaust, but the story is that there was an eye doctor in Germany in the 1930s who made Aliyah, and he put a sign up in his door which said, "For all of you who are nearsighted, there's a doctor around the corner. For all of you who are farsighted, follow me." And let's take a look. All right. Thank you, everybody.